All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our monthly live Q&A that we have with a group here. Also, we have emailed questions that come in around it, and we answer them. So if you are ever in the position where where you have a question about Reiki or experiences or things like that, this is a great format that we leave a couple of hours, just space for that kind of thing. We don't always get space to just have these conversations. And so we love this format. I am here with Danny today.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
Welcome, Danny. That's a lovely color on you, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Colleen is teaching today, but actually she's heading to Japan in a couple of days. So we always love it when she is able to join us from Japan. She's done that a few times where she has joined us from the top of Mount Karama and done some meditations. But we'll see. We never know what's happening in that space. They're quite a bit ahead of us. So um, anyway, so she'll be out of office teaching on Mount Karama for the next few weeks. Always so jealous about that. Anyways, just a couple of announcements. I don't think we've had it live on the actual Monday morning released podcast yet, but our merchandise line is live. You can go to ReikiLifestyle.com to the shop tab or just go to ReikiMerch.com. And I've kind of talked quite a bit about this, but we're so excited about it. It is been a while it's been in progress for quite a while. So that's exciting. And then the other thing is that um, we have a whole podcast coming out about it if you have more questions. But next up, Reiki and Explore the 12 Heavens registration is coming out soon. We are opening up our registration on November 18th. We're going to have a lot of marketing around that, but I want to make sure that we are um, letting you know what the dates are. Registration will be open from November 18th until um, January 20th, somewhere around there. It might have that off by just a couple of days. I'll make sure I get my days straight around that. But so you have plenty of time to register, but we'll talk about the early bird that we have and our free webinar that does the launch. You'll get a lot of resources in that. That is November 18th, and that's all about Reiki, shamanism, and journey techniques and how that all works together and how you do journeying. So it's an introduction to that skill as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our Q&A today. As I said, I am going to start with invocation. I did hear that it's going to be a little bit more of like a grounding meditation today. And so that's where we're going to start. Always helps to bring the circle together, bring me and Danny in. So we're going to get started with that. So it is going to be, anywhere from like 5 to 10 minutes with it all. So you can go ahead and get comfortable, but it's not, like one of the really long ones. But you can go ahead and get comfortable. If I'm going to turn my video off, if you want to turn your video off, you are welcome to. If you're here live, if you're driving, caveat with all of those things with our meditations, just allow it to wash over you, or if you feel like it's starting to alter you, to go ahead and just skip forward, or that kind of thing, as we always want to have our safety. All right, give me just a second and then we'll get started. So go ahead and take a deep breath, a couple of deep breaths, and just begin to arrive here. Let your body find a comfortable position, sitting or lying down, where you can relax and still feel supported by the earth beneath you. And as you breathe in, allow Reiki to begin flowing through your hands, your body, your energy field. And as you breathe out, let go of everything that you don't need to carry right now. The plans, the thoughts, the worries. And allow this time to return to yourself. Invite the light of Reiki to fill the space that you're in, letting go of any dense energy in the space, lifting it into the light. As you invite in the enlightened ones as they stand in a circle around you, the ascended masters, any of your spirit guides, divine animal kingdom, the angels. They shine their light onto you. And they remind you that together you are love. And place your hands comfortably on your body as any symbols that you might be attuned to or activated within you, all around you, and flowing through your hands. The power symbol, the mental emotional symbol, the distance symbol, however you connect in with them. And imagine now that you are in a beautiful forest. The trees around you are magic, and you can feel the depth of their roots flowing into the earth. And you can feel your feet on the cool soil. As you are in the enlightened realm. All there is love. There is no duality. And breathe. And the light is shining down on you, the light from the highest heavens, the highest sources of consciousness. And it flows down through your crown, flowing down gently through the back of your head and into your neck and shoulders, through your face and your jaw. As you let that flow of Reiki soften any places that feel tight or tense. And with each breath, Reiki expands through your chest, your heart, bringing warmth and compassion and peace. And you notice how your breath naturally deepens as you connect with Reiki. And you connect with the magic and the heartbeat of this forest, of the trees, of the earth. As that beautiful light flows down and fills your belly, as you release here. As you bring your awareness now into your hips and your legs and your feet, this light flowing down to the parts of you that are closest to the earth. As the light of Reiki brings in that color, that grounding, and anchoring you into the earth. Anchoring you onto the cool soil of the forest. As from the soles of your feet, the roots begin to grow deep and strong and extending into the earth. As the Reiki energy flows down through your feet and into the roots and into the earth. And it moves through the layers of soil and rock and crystal and reaching towards the heart of the earth itself. As you feel the stability of that connection, the deep knowing that you are supported by something vast and ancient. And with every inhale, the light of the earth, the nurturing energy of the earth flows up through these roots, up through your feet, up into your body, all the way up to the crown of your head. The same energy that sustains trees and rivers and mountains and life itself. With every exhale, release any excess energy or stress or heaviness down through your roots where the earth receives and transforms it, transmutes it. As the leaves fall, transmutes them into energy for the earth and great cycle of life. Stay here for several breaths so you notice the balance between heaven and earth, spirit and body. This Reiki flows freely between them, uniting both within you. as you are the bridge, the meeting point of light above and earth below. And as you continue to breathe, you bring your attention to your heart. And from your heart, the energy of gratitude expands. Gratitude for the earth, for your body, for Reiki's steady presence. The grace of gratitude. As you allow that gratitude to move down into your roots and up through your crown until your whole being feels held. As Reiki fills your auric field, that field all around you. So you are surrounded by light that is grounded and steady and calm. As you are connected, you are here. And take one more deep breath in. And as you exhale, gently bring your awareness back to the space around you. Feel the surface beneath your body, the air on your skin, the rhythm of your breath. As you gently open your eyes, returning grounded and peaceful and fully present. Thank you. And so it is. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Normally, I'd like to sit in that space for a while, but we have things to move forward with. Okay. Just trying to listen. I think So I think where we'll start are the questions kind of from yesterday, and there are a couple of questions related, just because I feel um, a little altered from that place. So I think that's since it's a more spiritual topic, I think it would be a good place to work from with it. Um, so because the other topic, we have a couple of questions too. I got your direct messages and things like that. So just so you know. Okay, so just to kind of catch everybody up, because we have some people that may not have listened to the Thursday topic. If you're on the recording, or yesterday's topic, if you joined, if you normally join live, but you didn't yesterday, for the month of October and some of November, we are talking about spiritual buzzwords. They are more than just buzzwords, but we're talking about spiritual buzzwords in the way that if you're new to Reiki, or even if you're not, you might hear topics that are a part of the nomenclature in spirituality. So, like the first week, we talked about chakras and like what they mean. And then, of course, we go into how Reiki heals and helps them. And then we also we'll continue with different topics. So yesterday we talked about attachments. So when we're talking about that, we're talking about spirit attachments, we're talking about cords and connectors, we're talking about intrusions. There's a bunch of different types of spirit attachments. And that is one of the things that we might hear quite a bit in spirituality and the healing arts that people talk about. And that's why it's one of the other ones that we talk about. Now, I do have to give the caveat that, in yesterday, we have about 20 to 30 minutes to talk about it. Today we're answering questions in regards to yesterday's topic. I don't want to go back through that 20 or 30 minutes like of learning around it. So if you are more curious about it and kind of the questions that we're talking about today in regards to it, I highly recommend that you go through and do the talk. And then Danny also did a lovely guided journey around it to go through. And if you do have any cords or connectors that need to be released, that is what that journey does. I also want to say that, as part of our next step, one of the skills that we learn in level 2 is more about spirit attachments. And we talk for 3.5 hours around it. So this is one of those things that you can really go into depth. And sometimes even that amount of time doesn't feel like enough time, because it's a big subject and there's a lot of different elements around it. Um, so I just want to kind of give all of that there is more to all of it than what I can cover in kind of all of these different things. But I do want to go through people's questions around it. So, and then I saw another question in here around it as well. That I'll talk about that one as well. So let me go through these questions. The first question is do you believe that detachment, so releasing attachment, is done with client choice versus Reiki doing it for us? I believe it is what I want to release sometimes after Reiki makes me aware of it. So I I like this question, and yes, I would say for the most part, Reiki is going to make us aware that it's there. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just does it for us. And then as a client, yeah, we do have choice around it. I have definitely seen as a practitioner that sometimes a client isn't quite ready to release it. And um, most of the time when that happens, it's not necessarily like a conscious choice. It kind of continues to there's several things with this. So I have seen, and this can be, and I talked about this yesterday, but this can be something that happens, is that sometimes a spirit attachment, for example, a symptom of it will create a client to like cancel sessions or classes after sessions, like right before they kind of get like scared about the healing that might occur with with the session, and so they tend to cancel. Or there's something that continues to come up that prevents them from uh being able to do the class or being able to do the session. Now, I also want to say, like, we also have life, right? Life happens, things happen. I am not attributing every single time with that. Every single time that something like that happens, that we have that we have like, oh, okay, that's for sure an attachment. Just saying that can show a commonality with it. Um, and I also have seen attachments release, like you said, by just like Reiki's not the only way to do this, right? And especially if it's a cord or connector, it's not the only way to do it. It's one way to do it. And Reiki is a good way um, to have a tool to be able to do it. Sometimes we're aware of it, sometimes we're not. It's like, sometimes it's chicken or the egg. Like, does Reiki help us to become aware of it, or do we become aware of it and so that we can use Reiki to be able to release it? More often than not, what I see as a practitioner, or what we see as a practitioner, is that it's actually a different symptom that has a more real life application, that then we find that it is a some sort of attachment. Now, when it comes to relationships, cords and connectors are a little more obvious than like a spirit attachment or something like that. So, um, like a cord and connector to a family member that there's an unhealthy relationship to, or a cord and connector to an ex in a romantic relationship or a friendship, things like that, that can have that cord with them. And so it's pretty obvious that there's a cord. And somebody did also ask, are cords and connectors the same thing? Pretty much, yes. Like, they asked, are they just two synonyms for the same things? Yes. Sometimes, a cord to me can present itself as like, it kind of shows to me, this is metaphorical, almost like an umbilical cord. It's like light, but it's like an umbilical cord, almost like where it is like a metaphorical, like actual cord. A connector can look a little bit different. Sometimes maybe it's like a hook, things like that, where they have like their hooks in you. Some things like that, that isn't exactly a cord, but it's connecting to people, or the attachment somehow is connecting to people, or something to them that isn't quite exactly a cord with it. But generally speaking, that's why we use them in the same way, because they are generally kind of like a synonym for each other. It's a form of attachment with it. So there's that. I wanted to answer that within it, as far as like what I mean when I'm saying a cord and connector. So I do see this where people are releasing these cords in their own kind of ritual with it. Seeing this a lot through either divorce or the release of a relationship from a romantic partner. Like, they're releasing their cords in their own ways. So yeah. And then other times we get into a Reiki session, we had no idea it was there, but it was affecting our life in some way, shape, or form. And we have symptoms in our life in some way, shape, or form. And it's the Reiki that's revealing it. So it can be both with it. B- and it's hard. You can't say like every single situation. Sometimes with the cords and connectors, they are hard. They can be hard to release without some sort of spiritual ritual, whether that's Reiki, whether that is like, like a burning bowl type thing where they are, um, letting go in some sort of fire or ritual ceremony or situation. Sometimes even things like smoke clearing or clearing can be a part of that. And then other times it's like I am going to release this, and I am going to let this go in my way, and that releases the cords. Um, so that is to kind of answer that question with it. And then a related question around this is that was put into the chat. Is there anything that you need to be cautious about when cord cutting? And with this, I would say that there are a few things that can happen. I wouldn't necessarily say cautious, but I would say aware is a better word to use. That one of the things that happens, especially with cord healing, and as we talked about yesterday, Reiki does cord healing, generally speaking, in as a difference to cord cutting. And you can just even hear the difference in the words cutting versus healing. So in healing, you hear more of that idea of, or in healing, it's more Reiki comes in and dissolves the cords, where cutting is more of that abrupt cut. Um, and uh, yes, the awareness that I will even give my clients when they are releasing cords to family, friends, relationships, that a lot of times those people on the other end of the cord can reach out. It's always something that I say, no, it's not always 100% true. Sometimes that person is really happy to also release the cord. Sometimes that is a sometimes that is a like a relief for them too. But in those unhealthy dynamics, you can certainly see that there can be awareness that that person can all of a sudden you get a phone call from them or a text, or there's some sort of communication that they want to have in, because they do feel it. They don't always know what it is, but they can certainly a lot of times feel it. I also would say with this that the cord healing in a healthy relationship, that is one of the places that I really prefer cord healing versus cord cutting. Um, between like parents and children. I know I talked a bit about this, but between parents and children, when they have a healthy relationship, especially young children, that's where I might come in and have that cord healing with it. And so that it isn't that abrupt cut where people can really feel that with it. With spirit attachments, the symptoms of release is that sometimes the person can almost miss that it if they've lived with it for a long time, and if it has um been a presence in them and in their life for a long time, that it can you can definitely feel, or you I don't want to say definitely, but I've had a lot of experiences where the client can feel it. Um and they feel that release, and there's an adjustment period. Even sometimes when there can almost feel like a depressive symptoms where like there's a missing to it. And even if that spirit attachment wasn't like, not that it's malevolent or anything, but it's not like a benevolent consciousness type thing, which usually the benevolent consciousness doesn't have that agenda of attachment, right? So, um, yeah, you definitely can see that, and that's true with any big release. So it's not just an attachment, but that can be true with any big release. And it would be similar to that, where when you are releasing things, your energy fields and your self can need a few, a little bit of time to have that adjustment period within your body, within your energetic and spiritual fields, before it can entrain into those higher frequencies. And we talk about this all the time, right? The word that is commonly used with this is healing crisis. It's not always like a crisis within our lives. So with that word, I don't always prefer that word with it, but that's the most common word that is used. So, but when we were talking about like a healing crisis, where people can feel headaches after sessions or after classes, or things can be really challenging in their lives, um, because of releases, and then you're making space for new. This is true with attachments as well. So you certainly can see those symptoms that come in after a large release, any kind of large release, but attachments as well. So those are the kinds of things. Also with cords and connectors, we can feel it on our end too, that can be a um a big release for us as well. So that can be one of those times, again, we're making space for the healthier versions of that relationships, or with, because it's not always a relationship. Sometimes it's accord to something that happened in a past life, or in our ancestral history or something like that. So we also have those situations that it's not always a person, or it can be a place, it can be an experience. All of those kinds of things can be a part of attachments. So um, so yes, absolutely, you can feel those releases, and those can be the symptoms for a little while. But eventually, once we've moved through that release, um, and adjusted to us being more sovereign in our body, then we can move forward in a more healthy way. And you really see this in relationships, that those relationships move forward in a more healthy way than they did before. So I think that is, answers kind of a few of those questions. And then, how do we know if we have them? How do we know? We had this question several times. How do you know if a client has a spirit attachment, cord, or connector? The one thing to know about Reiki energy is that even though we do additional training that has additional skills, and it's also a part of our practice as practitioners, and like who we are as practitioners, and it's additional training, right? You also can feel confident in the fact that you don't have to, you may not even want to. Like that's okay, that you don't have to. Know that also Reiki is always doing the work, even as somebody that can perceive when a client has an attachment. Reiki's still doing that work for me. I also use spirit guides, as I said yesterday. So guides come in and release the attachments. That's how we teach the technique around it, is guides coming in and releasing the attachments, and Reiki energy. But Reiki and working with those guides through Reiki energy, the ascended masters through Reiki energy, is a way to do that. And you don't need to perceive it. That's okay. You also can feel confident. And this is one of the beautiful things in Reiki energy. You can also feel confident that Reiki does this work. It's one of the things that it does naturally. Now, having the awareness to that, that can be helpful for sure. That's something that, it's part of the reason that we like to have these skills with it, but you don't have to. You just know that Reiki can do this work and that it does it naturally. And that's something that I always feel super confident in, because there can still be releases that happen that I don't have an awareness. It's Reiki and the client taking care of it, and it is, outside of anything that I need to know as the practitioner. And so it takes care of it. There can be some symptoms of an attachment. So If it's a spirit attachment, it can be like sudden changes in mood or behavior, unexplained physical sensations. Cords and connectors can be like difficulty moving on from past situations, drained after interactions, things like that, or being continuing to be drawn to a person or a place. So even though if you know like they're not good for you, you still continue to like kind of go back. That can be a sign that there can be cords that need to be released from them. And so if you all you need to do in that case is like, okay, Reiki, come in and take care of this. I'm having these interactions and I know that I need to release cords. Also, cords can reconnect. So now I don't, that's not to say that like that's all the time. That can also come down to our conscious choices as people. um, an easy example of this is a past relationship that you don't know why you keep going back and connecting back in, and maybe the cords and connectors release, but somehow you keep kind of you have those choices of, and that's not a judgment. It's a reality of life that we have this and that we keep kind of going back, and it's possible that that conscious choice of that or that choice of that then kind of recreates that cord and that connector. So that can be a case too, part of it too. We can also have the intrusions that are non-conscious. That's another form of attachment. And um, you can have like that feeling stuck or energy either in specific areas of our body or in places, like actual locations can be another place where that can happen. So now there are things that you can use to try to create that field around you that can um, kind of block, for lack of a better word, somebody or an attachment or something like that. As far as I've seen, attachments don't really come back. I'm not saying it's impossible, but once the attachment, a spirit attachment is released into the light, like it's in the light. It's not coming back. Um so I haven't really seen a spirit attachment reattach. I'm not saying that that is completely impossible, but I just haven't experienced it in the sessions that I have done. The times that I would say that I could see something similar to that happened is when there's some sort of spirit attachment to the land, and the land clearing, um, hasn't been done. So that would be a place that I could see a spirit attachment coming back. But generally speaking, I haven't seen that once they go into the light. So there's that. Now, as far as like preventative type measures, um, putting that field around you of Reiki light is very helpful for that. It's kind of a filter, kind of can like bounce off of me and back to you. I'm rubber your glue type situation. I had a situation where kind of these cords kind of kept coming in, and Reiki actually showed me this. It put like this Reiki. This is so silly, but so much of my um a lot of times in when you are experiencing intuitive things, a very common way, now not everybody is like this, but a very common way to experience that is metaphorical. Now for me, and there's another question around this, so I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but for me, I don't actually see anything. So even though I might say like it showed me or something like that, I don't actually see anything. I think it, and I have a knowing of it. I'm claircognizant and clairintellect. Sometimes other things as well, but those are my 2 main clear senses. So I just either know it or I think it. But one of the times with this, what showed it, like I literally got the metaphor of clear PVC pipe coming around me and like dropping down. I was actually in the shower, and it completely like shifted those cords that kind of came in and continued to try to connect. And it was really helpful. I really went into like the non-attachment about the situation after that happened. Generally speaking, I just use a field of Reiki or a bubble around me, and that helps. Sometimes you might need something a little stronger. There's lots of ways of protection. And really, when it comes to protection, I like Reiki because I like Reiki because it is a filter. It's not just like a shield. But sometimes, for me, I've had this situation where I've needed something that's a little more solid than just a field of light. But it still was clear. It still was Reiki energy, and it was very helpful for me. And that was something that Reiki came in and showed me around it. I wasn't even like I would never have expected that to be the case. Some people find really a lot of help with crystals, so like a smoky quartz or uh, oh my gosh, I'm put it in the chat. I know I'm like I can't. The word is not coming. Tourmaline, black tourmaline, black kyanite. Some of those are really good protection stones. So there's a lot of ways. It's really Reiki can do it. It really is just spirit guides. Like putting in spirit guides around you. I've seen that can be really helpful. There's a lot of protection techniques out there. So it's also really a lot of how you connect into it as well. So, and then with the things about how do you know, I talked about those symptoms. Sometimes you don't know. I know for me, like I have enough experience with it now that I can kind of I can kind of feel it. I don't get spirit attachments. It's pretty rare that happens. I know some people experience that a lot more than like I do. It has happened, but generally speaking, like I don't get them very commonly. So for me, I can feel it now. I can feel when there's a change, and I'll ask Colleen like, "Hey, you know, I feel like I have an attachment here in some way, shape, or form." Cords and connectors, I'm pretty aware of when that happens. Sometimes not, but sometimes, but the cords and connectors can be pretty apparent with it. But the attachments, generally speaking, like, "Hey, do I have an attachment?" And I'll ask her to kind of look into it for me. I feel like I can release them myself. I can do that work, but it is helpful to have that outside perspective with it. The other, way to have, a thing, if you were attuned to, Karuna Reiki, Zonar, Halu, and Hearth can come in and be, a very big protection. Those 3 are really good for protections. Those are good for, like, also any sort of psychic connection. I don't wanna use the word psychic attack, but in that form, because it's not always like an attack. Sometimes it is. I've definitely experienced that, but, other times it's just like an unhealthy psychic connection, and Zonar, Halu, and Hearth can come in and be really helpful for that. And then the last question, like I said, this is a really big subject, and we could continue to talk about it for like ever. Um, and how do we know if there's any spirit attachments on a sick person? So, definitely seen that. It can be true. It also cannot be true. So, really going into discernment around this, not projecting and not having story around, oh, yeah, this person has an attachment. Sometimes they're just generally sick. Sometimes it can be that, like I think about like chronic illness or something like that, or autoimmune. It's not always an attachment. Sometimes there are other things going on. Always also remember to stay within our scope of practice, right? Rather than saying, oh, yes, a person is sick and the reason they're sick is because they have a spirit attachment is not really ethical. So I'm not saying that there couldn't be a spirit attachment that causes symptoms. I've definitely heard stories around that. I have, had those kinds of things in sessions and things like that where it can be helpful. But a person needs to go through the channels of medical things like that. And as a person who has found a deep level of healing outside of the medical system, I am, with like, my naturopath, acupuncturist, and Chinese medicine doctor, things like that. So I'm not saying that's always going to have the answers. I am going to go and get my blood work done and tests and see doctors and things like that as well. So it is an integrative practice. And you definitely want to make sure as a practitioner that you have discernment. So yes, am I going to check into that? Is there an underlying spiritual aspect here that might be um, creating dis-ease in a person? I am not going to say that that is no, not ever true. And I definitely have heard people from their own experiences that releasing attachments has been helpful. Also, I have seen attachments create depressive like symptoms, but it is not our job as Reiki practitioners to say that a spirit attachment is causing depression in somebody. That is a job for mental health practitioners, and that would be the first line of checking into something. And just because it could create depressive like symptoms doesn't also mean that there isn't depression within that. So, again, you want to make sure as a practitioner that you are staying within the scope of our practice. And also, I leave room and space for all of the above type of possibilities because I've seen all of the above type of possibilities. And when you're a practitioner and a teacher and things like that, you hear stories of people who have had miracles through Reiki energy. And so I leave space for the miracles to happen in a session, but I also leave space that it's not going to fix everything right away in one session. So both can be true. But as a practitioner, it is our job to really stay within the scope of our practice and not get stuck in stories and projections around these kinds of things. So that is what I would like to say about that. Okay, I know that there's more questions around this, uh, but at the same time, like I said, there is more questions. So, we can continue to talk about this in the next Q&A. Obviously, there is a lot of interest in learning about these things. So, I'll talk to Colleen about maybe can we do more things around this subject for more information and learning around it, because it's definitely something that we have a lot of experience and skill in, and we do teach skill around it in our next up classes. Now it's more of a level 2 thing, so because we have to have a foundation underneath us before we learn about this. But lots of people do spirit attachments without that training as well. It can be a part of your intuition also. So, but if you do want more skill in it or want to know more about it, then that is another place that you can look because we do teach about it. Okay, Danny, anything that you wanna add on that one?
No, I think that's great. It's like such a big topic. So I,
Yeah.
I agree with you. So no, I would say go on to you have a lot more questions. So
Yeah. So, okay. So I think, I am going to move on to the question that, I talked about earlier. So the question is, and Danny, I'm gonna have you start off on this one while I kinda catch up with what's going on in the chat. Um, and then I'll kind of come in as well. So the question was, is I definitely want to teach. I just don't know where to find students. Is that something that you could address at some time? Um, I mean, I have a few local students, but I'm wanting to also teach online. So why don't you go ahead and start us off with that, Danny?
yeah. So my thought on this is like if you're not a marketing person, either learn or hire somebody. And it can be like a high school student, I swear to God. um, if it's overwhelming you to like learn all this stuff, then, work with somebody. You might know a niece or a nephew or brother or sister or, one of your kids. I think that's really important because it is overwhelming and marketing changes daily. So, you can start small too. You can be like a Zoom uh, distance Reiki share like we do. You can do in person, even if it's two people. and just start talking, because it really just multiply, and getting your name out there and everything. Social media, as we talked about, is the marketing, the community. I mean, people have community events all the time. I mean, I started out going to fairs, wellness fairs, and just volunteering Reiki, like a 15-minute Reiki session. And that way, just building up an email list is really good, because then you can do like a really simple newsletter. It doesn't have to be long and big and overwhelming. And it can just be once a month, and just reminding people what you do, and offering a Reiki share, or offering a Reiki topic is really good. It gets people involved. And talking about what they're going to learn about in class. What are they going to learn? Why would they come to you? And you might be different. You might teach different days of the week, or different times of the day, and that sets you apart too. Um, Word of mouth. I mean, talking to your family and friends, and actually anybody, your hairdresser or your mechanic, whatever. It's interesting. And I'm kind of excited about the merchandise, Robin, because I do have one Reiki t-shirt, and um, whenever I go into the grocery store they're like, what is Reiki? I mean, so it brings up something, and they're like, wow, my mom would really like that. Or gosh, my son might be interested in that. And so it's kind of like promotion, like a self-promotion too. Those are some of my ideas.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking that that's what William Rand always says, is that he wears Reiki
Oh,
items because it opens the conversation for people. Because they will come up and ask, or they will ask him like, what's Reiki? Or they might, what's Reiki? Or they might, know what Reiki is, and like it starts the conversation with it. So yeah, Reiki shirts and things like that, or hats or whatever, can certainly help with this. So what I would add to this is, if you want to do it kind of depends, right? You had said in this question that you are interested in teaching online. And so if your goal, or, having distance sessions, being more of an online practitioner. So if your goal is to have an online Reiki practice, then the things that you need to focus on are online practices, which means things like social media, which means, as Danny said, even a free distance Reiki share, which means, the things that are our online practices that create reach. How are you reaching the people? Online ads might be something. Building your newsletter list might be like a free giveaway. I think that one of the things can be really helpful are, and coaches do a lot of this, uh, free consultation calls, right? 15 minutes. We started doing this. Danny does free consultation calls with people. She does 15-minute free consultation calls. You can book those with her, and kind of giving clarity for what people might need next. A lot of people are going to start with sessions if they've never experienced Reiki. Um, and that's a really good place to build student clientele. But that's another type of service that you might offer to help you with building clientele. Honestly, if you want to have an online business, you're gonna need to do social media. No, not everybody needs to do social media if you're in person, but if you need to reach people across the country or across the world, you're going to need to do social media. People need to know where to find you. No, it can be basic. Don't have to be an expert at it. You just have to start somewhere. Tutorials are out there, they're going to be able to teach you more than what I can teach you. So in this short amount of time, right? You can go to YouTube for tutorials. A lot of times, like Instagram just changed their algorithm. And I am trying to figure out how to figure that out because it's different. So their reach now is going on keywords rather than hashtags. Also, Google just included Instagram in their search um, in their search. So, like, yeah, I have to adjust to the algorithm and figure that out. My bigger point is because that might be like Greek, right? My bigger point is that where I am going to find my answers is TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. How do I do this? What are best practices? What am I supposed to do with this? I also had this yesterday where I was in a meeting and figuring out best practices for ebooks. I'm going to ask best practices for ebooks through those three things. And I'm also going to ask chat and then chat GPT. And then I'm going to verify what are my best practices for ebooks because I don't know a lot about it yet. So those are some of the things that you can find your resources on marketing through social media, marketing through newsletters, building your email list, and of course, a website. You need a website regardless of if you're in person or online. If you want to build your in person, as Danny said, you are going to want to do word of mouth things, metaphysical fairs. Um, uh, Also, what I've seen in my local community, I live in a small town and not small, but it's like, we only have 20,000 people. So for those of you that live in big cities, that's a small town, a small town. But there's a couple of people that are in our community board all the time to, uh, promoting their events. So there's Reiki people in there, and there are people who do sound baths locally. They do little like mini day retreats where they're leading you in sound baths and sauna and things like that. It's all very spiritual, and they are Reiki people, but they're not like necessarily giving Reiki sessions type things. So I see people in our community boards all the time. I know for some of you that might be more realistic than others. Um, I live in a town that is half and half. I'm outside of Portland, but when you get outside of Portland, it's not always um, what we think of as liberal Portland. So my town is half conservative, half liberal. You can see protests on either side of the street with about the same amount of people protesting the different things. So we have, for me or for our town, like you would think, okay, maybe that would be a little uncomfortable posting in the board, but then I see people that really resonate with the people that are posting, like, oh, good. There's people who believe like me, think like me, and are offering space for people like me with it all. So you have that. I know for some of you that's not necessarily realistic, and posting in your community board might be like that's not going to feel comfortable to you because you do live in maybe more rural places where you're going to receive a lot of judgment and backlash. And so I understand, but that's another way. I see their classes full with this, and like even me, I'm like, oh, that sounds lovely, I want to go do that. So that's another way to do it. Private Facebook groups, some of them have rules where you can do that. Some of them have rules where you can't. Communities where you can see how people are doing it. If you have a local kind of metaphysical store, we have one that is the well-known metaphysical hub in the area. You can go there, and a lot of times you can do talks, you can do things like that. Also, grocery stores. So if you have a natural foods grocery stores, that's another place that you can give talks and stuff like that, flyers, things like that. Also, if you're doing in-person ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, if you have no clue how to do that, as Danny said, you can hire somebody, and ads are a little bit more of a science. So you might want to find somebody like on Fiverr to do them. That's another place that you can look for help in ways. Like doing something like that is another form of doing it. Collaborations. So things like going on podcasts or social media, people working together, because all of a sudden you're doubling your reach, right? If you're collaborating with another person's social media. if you're going to do that, um, one of the things that I can highly recommend for that is putting what is called a media package together before you reach out. You can just Google what that is. It's going to include a short bio. It's going to include your like social media numbers, things like that, that are a part of your media package. If you don't have a high social media following yet, that's okay. If you have an interesting, topic or a perspective to add to a conversation, like for us, for our podcast guests, it's not all about social media reach. We talk to people who we are interested in the subjects that they're talking about also. So there's there can be a combination of both. And it never hurts to ask. That's one of the things that I learned early on with it is that if you think that somewhere is um something is might be like, oh, they'll never be a guest or I could never be on theirs or whatever, it never hurts to ask. And yes, you might receive rejection, but you never know if the one person is going to say yes. And we've had that with guests on our podcast. So, people that we're small potatoes for like their following, we've asked them and they've said yes, and it's always surprising. And then we've had others that have said no, and that's okay too. We totally understand everybody's time is what it is, and that's okay. So those are some of the things and some of the places that you can start. Um, Really just engaging with tutorials, learning, and also know that definiteness of purpose sustained over time creates results. So it can be slow and then all at once. You never know how that's going to go. One of the things that we do say also is that if have to have a thing to support you, keep your job while you're slowly building your presence, whether that's in your community or whether that's online. Um, and so that you can have a way to support yourself while you're doing this. Um, but so that's another thing to also keep in mind around it all. That can be a reality of what you need to do until you're at that place where you just can jump in and just go for it. So that just kind of depends on our own unique situation. But it's okay if you do that, right? It's okay that you might need some time to build your business before you're able to just jump in, you know, 2 feet first with no financial support. That's a reality of the material world um, that we live in. So, Danny, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, and also just start before you're ready kind of thing, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. I remember years ago, and I just happened to be staying at Colleen's house. I think I had a medical appointment in her area, and so I spent the night, and I woke up in the morning with my PJs on, getting coffee. And she's like, "Let's do a Facebook Live." I'm like, "Right now?" She's like, "Yeah, let's just do it." And it's one of our, I mean, it's off now, but it was one of our, we had so many people going, what is happening? We're sitting there. We didn't know what we were doing. We were talking back and forth. It wasn't very professional, but it was real. And so sometimes just starting out that way. And sometimes I'll even do a Facebook Live for us when I'm out walking with my little animal neighbors, right? Just like, don't overthink it. Just put something out there. And that gets attention too. And then I didn't hear if you said this or not because I was looking at all the chats, but volunteering is really good too. If you can volunteer like at a hospital or a cancer center or, a veterans place. There's many places you can volunteer at and it gets word of mouth. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, I got quite a few clients when I was a volunteer coordinator at our local cancer clinic. And it really wasn't the patients, it was the caregivers. So you just never know where they're going to come from.
Yeah, that's really true. That's a great piece of advice as well. And no, I did not say that. So, yeah. And it also gives you a lot of practice too. So, yeah, I think because this person is also really really asking about online, you have to do online practices to build an online business. And you'd be surprised, like, we have a global audience. In our last animal Reiki class, we had somebody in Australia, Hong Kong, Japan, China, Scotland, Canada, and then all over the US. And so, and like so many of my so many of my online or so many of my Reiki clients are on the East Coast. So it really is possible. And but you do have to let people know how to find you. And and that is online practices. I mean, even if you are wanting to do, in person, you still have to let people know that you exist. But if you're wanting to do online, just know that there also aren't any boundaries. Um, Online, and that's fantastic. Like there's no, physical boundaries with it, is what I mean by that. And so that's fantastic, but you do have to, do the online practices to create that online business. And I agree, Danny. One of the things that social media has been, well, there's kind of two ways. Some social media is, fully curated, and other social media is not. Like you are seeing people in their pajamas, you're seeing a lot of people like without makeup, you're seeing people of all types and shapes, and and it's a beautiful thing to see that you can see that people are just showing up as them authentically. And I feel like in these spaces, that is what we are craving more than the very curated, you know, perfect, uh influencer look. And that's not a judgment towards that. That is for everybody who wants and needs that. And I love that too. But I feel like in these spaces, we are looking for authenticity, and that exists online. So you do not have to be the perfectly curated person. And the other thing to know is I just did, an article on imposter syndrome. So you can find that on our website under articles. It's it is like helping to overcome your imposter syndrome. Just so you know, like everybody, especially when you first start out, you go back and look at your old content and you cringe. Like embrace your cringe. It's a part of becoming a part of being online. And you will get more comfortable with it. And I still look back and I still even about the things that I say currently, like, oh my gosh, just I'm gonna cringe at saying some of these things, and it just is what it is. And I just try to move forward with that and try to not let it put me in like an overthinking anxiety spiral with it, because that is a part of there's the dual side of being a clear intellect, that mind that can come in. So yeah, for sure, definitely know that that's all a part of it too.
And another thought too, I was just thinking is doing online sessions. That's really helped because I would say like 98% of my sessions are online for both animal and human. And then sometimes people will be like, "Oh, can you teach an animal Reiki class?" Right? So it gets so when you do sessions, sometimes people want to evolve into classes and learning themselves. So doing, offering sessions would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Meg, do you have a question that's related to this, or is it a different subject?
Well, I have a different subject, but something
Okay.
I also want to say, which is sort of related to that subject. If I do Reiki, because I've been doing it 8 years, but now I feel a little more comfortable doing it. Would it be okay if I did it in my house first? And would I get any kind of bad energy from the sessions? And if I did, what would I do before and after? And then I have another question that reverts to yesterday.
Okay, let's go ahead and do, I'll answer your first question, and then I have a few other questions to address, and then we can go back to your second question. So yes, starting in your home is definitely one of those things that a lot of people have to do, because renting a space is, not a reality. with, finances and things like that, unless your other work really is able to financially support as you're building your Reiki practice, because that is another way to do it. You could go into an already built, spa or wellness center or something like that that can also build clientele, because they have a built-in clientele. Also, you could rent a space that's completely separate of something like that, and that is another possibility. But again, financially speaking, not everybody is able to do that. So you can absolutely start in your home. The big thing to know with it is that, you want to make sure that your space is calming, that, you have to consider like allergies if you have pets, things like that. Like for me, I am very sensitive to fragrances. So things like that are something to consider. Scented candles, like, those are some of the things that you would want to think about. As far as the energy hanging around in your house, or where your space is, you can clear it after. You can just clear it with Reiki using the power symbol. It's a great symbol to use for Reiki. With Reiki, you can also do any sort of clearing with things like smoke clearing. So whether that's Palo Santo or sage or cedar or things like that, that there's a lot of about smoke clearing that's out there. You can look that up. So there's that. You can also use like an essential oil spritz or Epsom salt, like fire, things like that, that can be helpful for the smoke or the clearing of energy afterwards. I haven't found that negative energy sticks around, because Reiki energy is a part of the session and it takes care of it all. And that's what people are there for. And also Reiki energy lifts negative energy into the light, but I don't want to disregard if that's your experience. So all of those things clearing after Kenyoku, which is that dry bathing that you learn in Reiki, with bringing off the energy, is a thing that you can use for you as well personally. So lots that you can use for clearing after every session, and lots of practitioners do that. So that's a very normal part of practitioners' rituals after sessions. So yeah, absolutely, you can start in your home. Okay, so I want to get to this session or this question because we did talk about it. When you all talk about observing what the Reiki energies are doing while we're sending, I see things happening. Is this actually happening? Is it spirit showing metaphorically? How is this different than experiences in a journey in terms of actually happening? And do people need to know what happened in a session in order to activate it? So when we are talking about observing, like in a journey. So I say that frequently about like, oh, this is what the Reiki energy showed me in a session. And I know that I already talked about how that's metaphorical for me or proverbial for me, because I don't actually see things. Colleen does. It shows in pictures for her, but for me, it's thinking and knowing. And I've got a little bit of clair sentient where I can feel it, but that one's way more rare. So you can look at your clair senses, and sometimes they're literal, other times they're metaphorical. I would say a lot of times it's metaphorical. So if I'm experiencing like a session where somebody is going into the universe and experiencing the like cosmic realms. Oh, Patty, I'm answering your question right now. All I've done is asked the question. So, and really, I said up along the lines of that, for me, I said this earlier, I don't actually see things, I observe them. I'm sorry, I think them and I know them. But Colleen is clairvoyant, so she actually sees pictures. So if it's actually happening, so is it literal? Is it metaphorical? It certainly can be both. If somebody is like, when I might know, like observe that somebody is going into the cosmos and touching the stars and things like that, they're not actually literally doing that. Is there a soul experience that might be happening? They might have experiences as a client but that might be on a more metaphorical basis. Maybe they need to go into those realms to receive healing of some way. Maybe they need to go in those realms because they're a starseed and that's a home for them, that feeling of home and connection. So it in those ways, many times it's metaphorical. That and also like the client might be asleep, so that you might be receiving some sort of healing that's happening there metaphorically, but the client is fully, snoring on the table type thing. Maybe they're having dreams around it that they remember or not. But other times, I definitely have them in that gap and they're not experiencing any of that. They are just receiving the healing and we are observing the whatever that metaphorical healing is. And and I've talked in this episode several times about some metaphorical experiences that I've had with clients, and how it's doing the healings, and even with myself, like I talked about that clear tube that came around me, and that's obviously metaphorical, with it, because that's how it showed to me of what I needed for the healing, what tool I needed for the practice, to be able to kind of have that blocking, for lack of a better word, energy around it. Now, other times it can be literal. So I would say I see this most of the time as a practitioner when they have physical symptoms. So you're experiencing something either physically or you're experiencing like that observation. Maybe you're seeing some illness in their stomach, for example. Maybe they have an upset stomach and you're literally observing their stomach, or you're feeling their stomach if you're like clairsentience and you feel it in your stomach. That can be more literal, that they're having an experience that you are kind of in a very literal sense picking up on. So it can be both with it, where it can be metaphorical and it can be literal with it. So I can't say that it is one or the other. It really just also depends on knowing your own style around it all, also, and like what it all means to you. As Colleen said, she sees pictures, like she is that clairvoyant style of clairsenses, but it is very metaphorical. So anything that is happening for her, she really had to learn what the metaphors meant, and how that works in her sessions. So it's rare for her to have the literal things come into the session. Sometimes it happens. But even in those very straightforward things, like somebody's having a physical sensation, the the there's still the metaphorical aspect to it. So actually, and I'm thinking of this, one of the stories that she tells is somebody who was a transplant patient, and I see you shot. Danny knows the story. I saw her nod her head. As a transplant patient, and I think it was a transplant of a kidney, and her body was rejecting it, and she tells this story publicly and has had permission around it. So and this happened years and years and years ago now at this point. And her body was rejecting it, and so what the session showed is that the kidney was like the new kid at school, and it didn't know how to work. It's like all of a sudden it came out of one body and went into another body, and it's like, wait a second, like what is happening here? This is all very foreign, very new to me, and I don't know how to work with this system. And so it was like, yeah, it gave her the metaphor of, I'm the new kid at school and I don't know what to do here. And so that was the metaphorical aspect of a very physical, literal situation that's happening. But by helping the kidney to understand, to integrate with the rest of the organs, like, and all of that kind of thing, that was actually really helped with the rejection aspect of it. And so there's it's that metaphorical aspect to it. as well. So both things can be true with it. And you really just have to learn how it works for you and your own clairsenses. And then the second part of your questions, your question is, do people need to know what happened in a session in order to activate it? No, absolutely not. And in some situations, like kind of number one rule is don't scare the client. Even my long-term clients, there will be things that might come through and they're very comfortable with me, channeling out loud what's happening. There are some things that come through that it's like, you don't need to share that. Just allow Reiki to do the work. So even with somebody that's comfortable with it, that can be the case. But new clients, I'm always really in a level of discernment about what I'm sharing and what I'm not until I get to know them better. Um, Generally speaking, if I'm in like a volunteer situation, I'm not sharing what's happening. And even in those situations, I'm very rarely even receiving impressions because it's not the right environment for that. They're just there to receive Reiki. And so in those situations, I am literally just going to give Reiki. And if an impression does come through, I'm pretty careful to share it. It would have to really depend on the situation, but in many cases, they are asking not to do that kind of Reiki work. You're just there to give straight Reiki. But if something like that were to happen in the session, and maybe you did have that observation, it certainly doesn't make it that it's not working just because you didn't share it. It can absolutely be a part of the practice. And then with new clients that come to me and they know that this is my session style where I'm sharing my impressions, um, even then, I'm going to really discern with the client before I do that sharing of it. So yeah, it doesn't make it not work if you don't share it. Yeah. Okay. Now the other question that I want to get to is I recently heard the term sacred rage. It's productive anger by all the ways it's called. Please share your thoughts on using Reiki for productive anger slash action and transmuting healing and protection for ourselves. This also relates to the cords and connectors discussion. So I want to say first that I actually haven't heard this exact term. So relating to this exact term, I don't, I, I want to be careful that I'm not like putting words into the mouth of what this means. I have seen some probably somewhat different versions of this. Um, and because I've seen people who are having like there's groups that go and they do like just like screaming, right? Where they are any anger that they might have, not like screaming, but like "Ah," type things. Like um so I have seen that in several different like people that I follow or I'm friends with. And them explain that a little bit that is really helpful to be able to have like a safe space um to let go of those emotions that might feel bottled up, whether that's about like current situations, whether that's about things that have happened to them in their life that they just have so much anger around, and rage around might be even a better term for that. And that it is a helpful release around that. I also have seen people talk about anger in a way that is like, you know, we dismiss it as some sort of, like super negative emotion. that we're just not supposed to have anger at any point and just feel calm and peaceful all the time. And that is a big thing in spirituality of almost bypassing it. Where I also don't think, and I mean, if you're able to achieve that, that is incredible. And there are people out there that are able to achieve that. Um, and I think that that is, gosh, if I could be in that place, like that is wonderful. With it. So I also, but at the same time, I don't think that's realistic for everybody, right? And I apologize too if I'm not answering this question in exactly the way that you are asking it, just because I haven't seen that term and I might not be understanding it correctly. Um, but I don't think it's realistic to say that none of us should or can't, get angry. I get angry. Like it's a part of a human emotion. And one of the things that you know, having gone through a big level of loss in the last year, having gone through some really challenging personal dynamic issues where things that others have done have made me angry. I'm not going to bypass that. And I'm not going to say that, like, oh gosh, I shouldn't get angry around it because it's wrong. However, can I get to the place of compassion after I've moved through the emotion of anger? Can I get through the place of non-attachment to the behaviors after I've moved through the anger? Can me expressing my anger in a safe space or expressing my anger help me to move through it? I'm not a conflict person. So for me, it's helpful to have a place to have my anger come out, whether that is like in a session or in my journal or something like that, so that I can move into a different space with it for myself. Yes. Sometimes does that anger have to create boundaries? Sometimes um, do I have to have, you know, do I have to have those hard conversations with people? Sure. Yeah, there's that exists. Do I try to not go into those conversations through anger? Yes, I do try to do that. I try to process my anger on my own so that then I can um move and view it from a different perspective. Yes. But I also going through some of that, I also had spirit tell me, like, human emotions are actually divine, including the anger, because in the enlightened realms you don't have those emotions, you don't have duality, and to experience some of those is a space of divinity with it. I think, though, also we are moving into such a different place in our evolution of humankind. And we're coming from a place where many people are aware that they are cycle breakers with a family that has had generations of, let's say, rageaholics, generations of super angry people that have raised them, generations of things like that, that they come into this lifetime and lifetimes and they are cycle breakers with it. Um, and that is something that is also really important as a part of our society. I think the awareness that we are receiving by, honestly, like, I think some social media is responsible this in a positive way. This is one of the things that's a positive aspect of it, is that we can see that, like, oh, I can shift this, I can change this, I can change this for my children. And so the reaction of that pendulum of anger of, like, I no longer want to continue this. I want to have this gentle demeanor, gentle parenting, for example, is an example of this. Like, I don't want to parent in the same way that I was parented. Um, and uh And so I think that that's also super important because we have that pendulum of like, we are moving out of that age of outer authority into inner authority, which that outer authority can have a lot of rage. We are moving into a different area of like, war, as for example. Also, having said that, we can have anger about things that are taking place in other parts of the world. And even in this part of the world, right? Things that are taking place here. And, the awareness of the inhumane parts of being human that are so challenging. And is sacred anger or sacred rage a part of helping us to process that? Because that's, to me, what we can do with it, is that it can help us to process that. And I like the term sacred rage because maybe what we can do is try to not bypass the fact that we have this natural human emotion, um, and channel it in a way that's more healthy. Can we move into the journaling of it and express it rather than expressing it to our children? And can we, move into like, or maybe it's therapy, or maybe it's, Reiki, maybe it's all these tools that we might have in a way to move through it without bypassing it. Um, and then act differently also than maybe how we feel towards other people. So there are things like that that are a part of this process. I don't think it's realistic for most of us to say that I'm never going to feel angry about things. You feel angry about injustice, feel angry when bad things happen to good people. You feel angry at people that made giant mistakes that have altered the course of your life. Just had this happen with a friend of mine who was killed by a drunk driver. This happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And leaving behind the life that he left behind, yeah, you feel angry about those kinds of things for somebody that made a choice that has altered the course of the trajectory of literal lives. And I don't think it's, and then you can move through it of like, okay, go into the compassion about that mistake that this person has made that also alters the course of her life. She was a 26-year-old girl that did this. And so, but it doesn't mean that I didn't feel angry in the first, at first with it. And how do you move through that emotion? And how can I look at that emotion? And how can I try to move into compassion around it? And compassion is, um, such a bigger word than what we think of, like, oh, I'm just giving you compassion. Compassion is that deep inner knowing. It's that deep level of kind of like of a love energy. It's a grace of compassion. So, that's, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm just full of compassion all the time. I'm not. I have to move through that. I have to, understand that things are also, working at a bigger level than I can understand in this moment. So, um, I hope that kind of addresses that. I'm not sure, just because I don't know if I'm not understanding that term, but I definitely have I definitely don't think that getting into like when I feel anger towards my kid, I'm honest. Like, I'm gonna be fully transparent. Like, I make mistakes with that all the time. She is full of chi all the time, 100% of the time. And that is hard. It's hard. And yes, do I lose my temper? Yes, I'm going to be fully transparent as much as I try to be a gentle parent. She's not a gentle kid, and that's okay. That's part of her superpower, but she's not a gentle kid. She is full on all the time. And that is one of the most beautiful parts about her. But yeah, I lose my temper. And I have to apologize. I have to say, I am sorry that this happened, that I reacted that way. That was not fair. I should have handled this better. I should have taken a deep breath. I should have done all of these things. It wasn't okay that I reacted towards you in that way. And that's a me problem, and I'm sorry. Um, and, but to say that I thought going into parenting, oh yeah, I'm going to be zen, I'm going to be chill. And that is, I don't think that's realistic for any parent, but then let alone a parent of somebody who is full on a strong-willed child, neurodivergent, like all of those things. It's just not realistic, and I have to support her and who she is, but boy, it's challenging sometimes, especially when she's in her anyway. I think you all know my point with that. And then also work on myself in those situations. And Danny, I saw you unmute, so go ahead.
I was just going to agree with everything you just said. And I think really simply that Reiki provides a really kind and safe space for when we're feeling rage or uncomfortable or resentment, all those fear words, right? It creates a space of like, and then it also it moves the energy. Like Reiki can move that energy and filter it, or whatever words we use. And then it also empowers us. It gives us that empowerment of like, okay, instead, like you just said, like instead of being enraged and frustrated and mad, it's like, wow, compassion or empathy and understanding and listening. So, yeah, again, I don't really know the sacred rage term either, so that's a new one for me too. But I think that we're on the same lines of it.
Yeah. Yeah, great point, Danny. That is such a good point, that is something that Reiki helps with, to transmute it. And I think that's why I'm sometimes able to get, not just me, like many people are able to get to the place of compassion with things, even when very wrongdoing was done, is Reiki energy around it, because it brings that in, it brings in those graces, which are divine gifts. And trying to get that place. And it doesn't mean that I'm there. And I think about the situation with my friend, for example. Yeah, I dip back into it, right? And it's easy to do. But it is one of those things that Reiki really helps with that. And there's also a second part of this question of like, this relates to the cords and connectors. That is a place that you can have cords. So releasing those cords can help releasing, boy, now that I'm saying that, I'm like relating back to one of the situations. Yes, releasing those cords. This is a place where they can get stuck a lot. So they might be small, easy to release. They're not like all that serious, but they continue that cycle of releasing this and moving through it, and not bypassing how we're feeling, but then also not getting stuck in it, because it's not productive for us. It's not helpful for us to be in that space. But sometimes it takes longer. Like sometimes, like, yeah, I was telling somebody this recently, like, yeah, sometimes it's not, that's sometimes the only thing that can help is just time. And you do move through it with time and continued asking for the the help of our practices, the help of our tools and techniques, and the help of Reiki energy. Because it's not productive to stay in it for a very long period of time. And I feel like it helps you to get over things easier in less time through Reiki energy than it might. Like I see people that are stuck on things that happened, 25 years ago, that are small. I'm not talking about big traumas. I'm talking about small things. And like the grudges that they can hold. And I think, you're holding that for that long? Like, seriously, release that cord. That doesn't help you. Um, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way, even though it kind of sounds like that. I just think of it in a way that is uh, just so like, I wouldn't want to be in that place for forever. So how can I help myself to move through it? How can I help the situation to move through it with it all? All right. So Meg, go ahead and ask your question. Oh, hold on.
My question is, I believe I've learned Reiki, Animal Reiki, Master, and Holy Fire, and I think I had like 10 feet of connectors and intrusions and all that. From the time I was born, I believe that my mother, who gave me up, her grandmother, her mom put stuff on me, and then being abused, that put stuff on me. And as I went on, that put stuff on me. So now I felt like it was 10 feet of stuff around me. And is it possible? Was that possible? And now I feel like every day with Holy Fire and Animal Reiki, I feel like it might even be now from 10 feet to maybe 6 inches. And I feel like every day I'm being born. Like I feel like I'm here. Um, and as far as I get rejected and stuff, but I don't have any family, they reject me. And then I look at it as, what am I getting out of not being rejected? And it's being alone. But when I'm alone, I can self-reflect on myself, and I can meditate and do Reiki. So I'm questioning you, is it possible to have 10 feet of that stuff around you?
I would say that yes, and I would say that that's probably like a metaphorical aspect of the layers that are needing to be released for you. So if you're talking about, like, if you think about that going from 10 feet to 6 inches, that's so many layers to be released. And it's understandable that there would be a lot to release, especially if there's a lot of trauma to work through, a lot of all of those things to work through. That it sounds like you've been doing that hard work. And so to me, it would, like, if I was a practitioner, to me, I would think of that as this metaphorical 10 feet of gunk that needs to be released. We talk about those layers all the time, that Reiki is lifting the layers, it's lifting the quilts, it's lifting the 10 feet of rope, and eventually it's getting you down to 6 inches. And now you have to release that last 6 inches, but sometimes those last 6 inches are the hardest part, right? Like that's where the deepest stuff and lies with it. And that's what Reiki does. It continues to help release things and release them until we are getting down to the version of ourselves that we know is our authentic self, the version of ourselves that um, is our, who we know ourselves to be and who we want to be. It's really challenging. It's so hard when we move through these things and then we still have these life experiences, like you said, of the rejection in this time frame. As you're doing this work, it triggers all of those things that's happened in the past, and that's so hard. And Reiki is there to support you. But yes, I would say that is, when we're talking about all of it, that's like what we're talking about, is that whether we use the words of layers, whether we use the words of rope, whether we use all of these things, that can be that um metaphorical part of it. And so I would say too, Meg, for you to also um really, like, validate and notice that for yourself and your intuitive self, that you are having these metaphorical ropes show up, and that is part of your intuitive sense. Like, oh, okay, this is how I'm perceiving this. And however, whether it showed you, whether you feel it, whether you thought it, whether you know it, or all of those clear senses that are a part of it, to really notice for yourself that a part of this process is also that um you are building on your intuitive skills as well. And so when they show up in other aspects of your life, to feel confident in your intuition and the way it shows up for you and how Reiki is showing you. But yes, this is what Reiki does. This is what self Reiki does. This is why people talk about how powerful self Reiki is, all of those kinds of things, because it is releasing those things from us. And getting from 10 feet to 6 inches is a really big feat, and no pun intended, sorry. But it is a really big accomplishment and success. And it's so hard. And so really just giving yourself a lot of love with that as well, and really validating yourself and that experience and all of the healing that you're going through. And not only just the healing, but the empowerment. And it is absolutely what Reiki just does when we are doing Reiki. Okay. Well, we are at time. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is we will finish up. Thank you all so much for these conversations and these questions. It's also been kind of like those spirit attachments and cords and things like that. Also, like, oh, okay, this is a really big area of interest with people. So we'll definitely take that into consideration. Um, and we'll see you next month. I forget. I feel like next month's Q&A might be it's a bit early next month. It's on the 5th of November. So if you do want to join live, then just know that it's earlier in the month. Sometimes we have to do that based on travel and different things like that. So we open the circle for you. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Danny. Thank you all to your questions. Great conversations today.